Good morning. Today we'll look at chapters 13 through 15 of the book of Judges. And yesterday we had just come through a time of peace for the Israelites, where they had, been following God through leaders who were faithful to God. And today, as chapter 13 starts out, the Israelites again did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. And the Lord gave them into the hands of the Philistines for 40 years. And I don't know if you're like me, but that number 40 pops up, and I'm aware of it so often in the Bible. There were 40 years in the wilderness. There's 40 days of rain, and 40 days Jesus was tempted in the wilderness, and so often we hear that 40 number, and it has significance, and it's just like the numbers 7 is a completion. But anyway, 40 years they lived under the rule of the Philistines. And then it talks about a certain man of Zorah, of the tribe of the Danites, whose name was Manoah, and his wife was barren, having no children. And again, a story we hear often, and with Zechariah and Elizabeth, Joseph and Mary, they hadn't had children yet. Not that they were old and barren, but several times, God uses people that haven't been able to have children. But an angel of the Lord appears to Manoah's wife, and so far we don't have her name. And the angel appeared to the woman, to his wife, who had borne no children, and he says, although you are barren and have no children, just kind of rubbing salt in the wound, God has found you, and God will favor you with a child. However, you can't drink any wine, you can't eat any unclean foods. You have to be very careful in what you eat, what you drink, and how you act, because this man will be a Nazarite. He will be, no razor is to come to his head. There are specifications for this child before he's ever born. And then the promise, it is he who shall deliver Israel out of the hands of the Philistines. And how often does God do that? Rescues his people out of the hands of the oppressors. It's just, it's a story that goes on, plays again over and over and over again, just like the Israelites over and over and over again do evil what is in the eyes of the Lord. And so this man of God, this angel, leaves the woman, and she tells her husband, she says, a man of God has come, and this is what he told me. And then he prays to God. He says, oh Lord, if this is true. So there are still people in Israel, even though they've been under the Philistine rule for 40 years, that pray to God, that know God. God isn't totally forgotten. They have a remembrance of who he is. And I think that that's one of the things that we as adults, as we raise our children and take them to church and Sunday school and teach them, is that so that if they do wander away from the church, or if they, whatever happens, they have that memory in their mind of God, of Jesus who loves them. And so these people, even though they have sinned and done evil and are under someone else's rule, and maybe they've been crying out to God, but they know God. They know who God is. And so Manoah prays to God and says, if this is true, let this man return so that I may see him. And again, the angel comes again, and she's in the house and he's not. So she runs to get her husband. And the angel waits for him to come back. And he wants to fix a meal for this angel and offer a sacrifice to the angel. But the angel says, you can fix the meal, you can do the sacrifice, but it's for God, not for me. I'm just a messenger. And Manoah would like to know this angel's name, and the angel doesn't give that. He doesn't give the name. But then when everything is done, Manoah is afraid that they will die because they've seen God, or an angel of God. And his wife says, why would God come and give us this wonderful news and tell us that we're going to be the parents of a mighty man who is going to deliver Israel? Why would he do that and then kill us? Think about it. Don't be so stupid. But anyway, they do. They keep their promise to God, and And it says the woman bore a son, named him Samson. And the boy grew and the Lord blessed him. And so Samson is a name that we're familiar with. And we're going to hear a lot more of Samson's story as we go on. But in chapter 14, Samson went down to a nearby town, to Timnah, and saw a Philistine woman, one of the oppressors. And he says to his mom and to his dad, I want her for my wife. But, they're kind of reluctant. I mean, why don't you marry one of our people, And, and we still kind of hear that today. Why don't you marry one of our people? But that's not what happens. And we can't control who our children fall in love with. We can't control who we fall in love with, And not that I'm not saying that there's anything bad about that, but, sometimes we're surprised in so many ways. But so he goes down, and as he's on his way, there's the story of the lion rushing at him. And he tears this lion apart with his bare hands. I mean, a lion, man, I would be fear-struck and not know what to do. But with his bare hands, he defeats a lion. And when he comes back past the lion, what happens? But there's a hive of bees in there and honey, and he takes some of the honey and he eats it. And he later uses this example as a riddle to, with these people. And this is the first time we see that, he's done this riddle, out of the eater came something to eat, out of something strong came something sweet. And of course the Philistines have no clue. I mean, how would they be able to figure that out? But they talk to this woman that he has taken to be his wife. And they say to her on the fourth day, coax him into telling you, the secret so that we can solve the riddle, so that we can get the prize. Let's cheat. Let's cheat. And she, oh, Samson, you don't love me. You don't love me. If you love me, you tell me. I mean, I'm just eating up with wanting to know. And then finally on the seventh day, on the morning of the seventh day, the day that they have to solve the riddle, he gives in and tells her. And what happens? She goes and she tells, and they solve it. And he knows. He says, if you hadn't plowed my heifer, you wouldn't have found my riddle. If you hadn't, pestered my wife, if you hadn't cheated, if you hadn't done wrong. And then it says in verse 19, the Spirit of the Lord rushed on him, and he went down and he killed 30 men of the town, took their garments, because, it was... all of this had happened, and then the last thing in this chapter, Samson's wife was given to his companion, who had been his best man. Think about that. That his wife was given to the man who had been his best man. And there's so much of this story we don't know and we don't see. But anyway, Samson wasn't too happy about that. And then it says at the time of the wheat harvest, he went to visit his wife, bringing a goat, and he wanted to visit with his wife, but her father wouldn't allow it, and he says, take my younger daughter instead. What? I mean, I don't understand some of the thinking and processing of some of what goes on here. That just doesn't make sense at all, but maybe he was trying to appease Samson. I don't know for sure, But he goes, as it says, Samson went out and caught 300 fox, and he ties their tails together, and he put a torch between their tails. I mean, so that it was dragging behind them, not that the fox were burning, and set them free, and burnt up his father-in-law's fields and everything. And of course, then he's everybody's upset with that. But Samson says, if this is what you do, I will not stop until I have taken revenge. And then he again killed a whole bunch of men. And it's just, the story of Samson and his revenge on his father-in-law and on the Philistines who have cheated him and everything is quite a story. And then the Philistines come, Samson is hiding out, and they come wanting to capture him. And they talk to his kinfolk, and they agree to capture Samson, tie him with new rope, and Samson makes him, well, you promise that you won't kill me, and I will let you do that. And they promise that, and so they turn Samson over with his hands bound behind his back with new rope. But again, the Spirit of God came upon him, and he broke the ropes, and he found, it says, a fresh jawbone of a donkey, and with it he killed 1,000 men. You know, a mighty warrior was Samson. And we've just starting to see and hear a little bit of Samson's exploits as far as the Israelites go. And the ending of this story, after this battle, Samson is thirsty. And he says to God, I am thirsty. I need something to drink. And God causes water to come out of a rock. He splits open the hollow place, and water came for Samson to drink. So God had promised Manoah and his wife that this son of theirs, Samson, would deliver Israel. And it hasn't happened yet, but we're finding out that God is showing favor and that God is watching. And again, another example of God always being true to his promises.